A thriving marriage is not always a natural thing, but it can be done. The Gemara says in Maseches Soita that making shidduchim, pairing people up together, is as difficult for God as splitting the sea. And commentaries wonder what that exactly means. How could anything actually be difficult for God? God is all-powerful and all-knowing, and God created the world and stuff like that. But the way some Mefarshim explain it is that it's a statement, a commentary on how difficult marriage actually is, on how unnatural marriage is. Because the sea is one entity, it's one unit. Splitting it, making it into two, is unnatural. And that's what marriage is, or marriage is kind of the exact opposite. It's like two entities, two people, with two sets of opinions, upbringings, worldviews, history, perhaps even trauma, desires, everything. It's two different worlds, and they're supposed to become one. They're supposed to merge. They're supposed to come together. And the Torah even says, "V'hiyu levasar echad," that the whole purpose of marriage, Adam and Eve coming together, the first marriage, was to become one flesh. And to unite two very different people is difficult, but it can be done. It's just not natural, which means you can't just expect it to happen. You have to actually do something to make it happen. We say in Sheva Brachos, Asher bara sasain v'simcha, God has created joy and gladness. And the commentaries on the Siddur, the Abu Dharam explains God is the creator of joy and happiness, implying that joy and happiness is a creation. You can't just expect it to happen. You actually have to create it. And how do you create it? How do you create happiness? How do you create oneness? How do you get two very different people in sync? There's a mimer from the Alter Rebbe in Shir Hashirim, the first mimer there, and he asks a similar question in the context of our relationship with God. God is infinite, we're finite, two very different existences and beings. How could we possibly connect? What is the connection point between these two very different existences? What's the connection point? He says, tainug, pleasure. The merging between infinite and finite, the merging between two very different beings and existences is pleasure, enjoyment. The merging of two very different people coming together is pleasure. And I don't mean exclusively physical pleasure, but a deep sense of enjoyment. Because pleasure is probably one of the deepest parts of people. If you could be sensitive to what your spouse really likes and appreciates and enjoys, that can be very uniting. That's unifying. If you can identify your shared moments of enjoyment, that could be very unifying. That could be uniting. In fact, when I talk to couples, instead of just trying to figure out what the problems are and what's getting in the way, I actually try to talk about their connection points, their shared moments of pleasure, their shared moments of enjoyment, and talk more about that. Because the more we can focus on our shared connection and our desire to connect, and less on what's obstructing the connection, the more we can get our minds thinking about that, the more we can train our minds to see that. Because there's an infinite amount of reasons to not feel connected, because you're two different people, two different backgrounds. People are different. That's just the way it is. But there's also plenty of reasons, opportunity, and ability to connect. But it's asher bara sasin v'simcha, that joy, that gladness, that connection, that pleasure, the connection moments have to be created. And the way we create that, the starting point of creating that, is shifting our focus, is looking for them. And when I see clients, when I see couples, I encourage them and inspire them to look for the connection points. Because they already know why they're not connected, or maybe they don't, but they often feel disconnected. So knowing why they do feel connected, or why they have felt connected, or have them envision what it would be like to feel connected, thinking in that way can actually push the mind to actually do that and to actually build and merge and become one and bring peace and unity and love to this world. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.